Right.
Or-
So let me ask you, so we had this discussion, should we call each other representatives or by our first names? Do we have a consensus?
I don't know. I thought that the committee meetings were less formal, but whatever keeps us out of trouble.
So how about if we go informal today, but maybe there'll be a new rule? Is that a
Okay.
fair, everybody go with that? All right.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ruth. Can everyone see this while we're waiting for Jacques? I just want to make sure that this,
Yes, Darren.
okay, great.
So do you see the text from Jacques, Darren?
I do. I see what he's asking now. He's asking for the, for me to text him
Yeah.
that. So
Great.
just bear with me, everyone.
So let me ask Carlene this question, and Jessica definitely weigh in, but if you're going to be here for part, not all, Carlene, I mean, the current agenda would have us doing the teacher survey first and talking about that, and then talking about the sort of the sequence, the timetable. So that still sounds right to you? So participate in the first part, not the second part. You can catch up later on the
Yeah, the timetable, I reviewed it. That makes sense.
okay. All right. Let me there's two quick updates I want to do. I'd rather wait. Let's see. All right, hopefully this will be it. I think Jessica should get a high rating on, what is that, Room Rater? So like the way you go from a dark room into a light room. We're just giving you, did you hear that?
I appreciate that. I like it. So I don't know, for those, because you guys haven't been in my home, I have a condo that is 777 square feet, and it is an isosceles triangle. It's a very strange shape. So this is a hallway, but because the archway is right here, it looks like its own space, but it's the best because it's got the pictures.
Very good. I give it, you know, at least a 9, maybe a 10 of 10.
I appreciate that. The dog crate in the background probably knocks it down a little bit, but I'll get that out of the frame next time.
I just decided not to go with Glory. I finally learned that after all these months, that I could do that.
Good. Carlene, while we're reading, I just wanted to show you, have you read any the Edward P. Jones short stories?
Nope.
Okay. I am happy to loan these to you. Ruth is nodding too. These are all set in DC. A lot of them around Howard and like up into Eckington and up Rhode Island Avenue.
Okay.
So a lot of like Ward 5-ish, but they're really beautiful. And the two books are like companions. It all makes sense when you read them both.
Okay. Cool.
And he also has a book whose name I can't remember, which is literally one of my best books ever. About, oh gosh, I can't remember, but I'll think of it. And if you're, yes.
I'm a total fangirl. I really like Edward P. Jones.
It's really,
I've only written like
really
3 things, but I've read them all.
Jacques,
And if you're looking for, you're looking for DC based stuff, Carlene?
No, I was just telling Darren I really don't have time to read much, but he asked me what was I reading, and I was like, I'm kind of stuck between 2 books, but this one is DC based.
I'm
You know,
gonna check that out.
I'll just say the other, sorry, Darren.
Oh, please go ahead.
The other great DC author is George Pelecanos, who wrote a lot about Word 4, and he actually did a fundraiser for Frasier, and Frasier is actually a character in one of his books.
Wow. That's fun.
So, all right, Jacques, are you there?
I am here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, I hope everything's
Jacques.
okay.
We're working through it. Hello, everybody. We're working through it. I'll just say that.
Cool.
All right. Okay, so the plan today, we have 1 hour. We're going to leave at, we're going to end at 5:30 sharp. We're going to lose Carlene at 5. So we're going to go right into this. I'm going to give a couple of updates. that may take a few minutes of discussion or not. And then Darren's going to do the presentation of the teacher survey. And then we'll go from there to talk about the timelines and the process. Okay. I just met with, Alistair asked me to meet with the Ward 2 EdNet chair, which I just did, and there'll be a process of bringing them some slides, and they also want to do a little tiny survey. And so I think what they're going to develop is like a 3-question survey, including what are the things that you most want to know about your school. And they're going to give that out as a way of getting some feedback. So what I was thinking is, I know that in the end, we have our slides and they're great. But they're long, and the survey we have, it's long, and maybe a lot of people would like this. So what I was going to suggest is that when they develop that I will share it, and maybe we just make it available to everybody. And people can use it with their ward councils. They can use it if they go out to a PTO meeting, they can use it, whatever. And, they can calculate the results and share it with everybody. They can calculate the results and use it for themselves. I mean, it would be informal, but it would just be helpful. So I just wanted to say that. Anybody has any comment? The second is, do you think would anybody else be interested in that? Do you think? Any sense of that?
I just had, I had a question about whether you thought, so I have 2 questions. One specifically on this, how would it be different or preferable perhaps to the survey we just put out a link for families and community members?
So it would be on top of, in other words, we would still hope that those people would do that survey, but it would be something that would be shorter and that you could do, in different settings. That's really what I would say.
And are you including that? You including that in the calculations or anything like that?
I
That
think
survey,
the
'cause those
idea,
they're different questions and everything, right?
yeah. I mean, I think the idea is this is really for individual members to be able to use with their people, calculate it for themselves, and then they can share it with Darren. Darren can share it insofar as it is useful for other people, but it's really for us to understand our wards, and insofar as that is of interest to other board members, which I think it is, to share it. I don't know that we want to make it more sophisticated than that. It's a tool. But I thought it might be of interest to others.
I'm going to save my second question until after your second update.
Okay. And then my second one is, we had talked earlier on about making the slides available to community groups that wanted to distribute it. I know C4DC had asked that a while ago when they piloted it, and we promised they could. I think, Jacques, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think at one point you had indicated that PAVE might be interested in that. So I just wanted to say what we're going to do is, Darren, the surveys now, they're set up to be individual links to different Google surveys, which is complicated and requires Darren to be involved. So that would go, and if there was a way that they could just use a Google link or some link that didn't come to us, that would be fine. But otherwise he would take those out, but otherwise it would be the same thing. And, people could use it as they saw fit. I know part of the C4DC idea with some of the ward council was to be able to use it with at PTO and LSAT meetings. And then the last thing is that Jacques and I are on the schedule to talk to the student advisory group. I want to say November 1 or November 10, anyway, coming up. So any thoughts, comments on any of that?
Ruth, so one comment. I spoke to the Ward 6 Public School Parent Organization on Tuesday night. I only had half an hour on the agenda, so I condensed some of the activities. Like, for instance, instead of having them fill out the survey link, I had them put their ideas in the chat for the second survey. Most of the folks in the room, there were only 7 folks attending at the time, but the 7 folks who were there were all very familiar with the star rating. So we went through the slides, but didn't have quite as much time to go deep into the details. So in terms of sharing the deck, I did make it a PDF and send it to Suzanne Wells to distribute out, along with the OSSI presentation that they did to us about the school report card at our working session. I know it's on Simbly, but I sent it to her so that she could send it out to the whole listserv, because folks had questions about the forthcoming report card plans, and as well as feedback on the STAR. So I'm glad we are sharing out the deck. I know that that was important for the folks in the room to both be able to go through in more detail. And I told them, to fill out the survey and to send me any emails that they wanted to add points to, but then also to be able to share that with others on the listserv who were not in the meeting. My
Makes sense.
question is about whether we, and this can be something we discuss later after when we get to that point. I love the timeline, and I really appreciate that you laid out, especially the extended timeline that shows all the engagement that happened prior to this current committee work. I also really appreciate the details of how we're going to incorporate things. What I would love to talk a little bit more about, to hear your thoughts on and see if we can all get on the same page about, is how we'll incorporate feedback, like what I heard from the Ward 6 Public School Parent Organization, how that will get aggregated in. So will we send that all to staff? Is there some way you want ward members to condense that before we share it with Darren? So if we could just talk about the tactics of that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, Darren had raised something similar, so that's a perfect question. Oh, and I guess the other thing, which is there's also, and Jacques, if you haven't seen it, you are forgiven, but Zach had wanted you and me to come to the Ward 5
Thank
meeting.
you.
So,
Okay.
all right. So anyway, so a lot of things are happening. So that's just to say that. Okay. All right, let's go right into the survey. Darren.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. I don't know if y'all can see this. I'm gonna give a very broad overview of the teacher survey. 494 teachers responded, so about half of them completed the entire survey. So what you see is just based on 267 teachers who completed the entire survey, instead of one answering the first question and getting kicked off or not finishing the rest. We're just focusing on the ones that hit end and finish the entire thing. And so some high level takeaways from this is just a lot of open-ended questions. And so we got a variety of different responses from teachers. Mind you that these slides are not disaggregated by ward, by school type or anything like that. That will go in a later report, but this is just high level. What are the trends that we're seeing? And they were mixed, and you'll see that. So another key takeaway is how teachers were split on whether agreeing or disagreeing that star rating provides a fair assessment of their school's quality. Most teachers agreeing that the star rating affects the amount of attention paid to math ELA at the expense of other subjects. And then teachers sharing indicators that they felt should be included in the STAR framework that serve to support the needs of students and communities. The top three were teacher retention metrics, student growth scores, and providing a well-rounded education. And one of the earlier items was asking teachers to define what school performance meant to them. So most of them used the technical term of reflecting test scores and achievements scores. The next was supporting communities and families. So more of like a whole child aspect of what school performance means to them. This might be something to look at later down the road if we do any further engagement with teachers, or at least defining school performance, what the state board defines or OSSI defines school performance as. So that there's no differences of opinion of what that means. Another item, so this is the split feelings of of whether it provides a fair assessment of the school's quality. One thing to note for this is not a lot of teachers felt strongly agreeing with this, but there are more strongly disagreeing that it provides a fair assessment of school quality. Another item that this was based on over attention to math and ELA performance scores compared to other subjects. And so nearly a quarter responded strongly agreed with this notion. So this is, I think this is in line with what we were anticipating with that group. Impacts on educators' ability to teach, top indicators that agreed should be included in the star rating were, well, this should be another slide, but the top indicators they felt should be in the star rating were teacher staff retention, student safety, and a valid indicator of school climate. I apologize for the title of this one. But there were no strong views on indicators that either should only be published in school report card or neither the school report card or star rating. In this next slide, the star rating, we asked teachers, star rating provides a complete picture of my school's performance to families who are choosing a school for their children. A good portion said that they strongly disagreed with that notion, that 70 teachers said that they did not agree. Most of them disagreed with this notion. Indicators that support the needs of students committees, as I mentioned, teacher retention, student growth metrics, and well-rounded education. Indicators that support the needs of students and communities, something that should be prominently displayed in the DC school report card, but not in the star rating. We asked teachers to differentiate between what should be in the star rating, what should not be in the star rating, but in publicly reported in a school report card, or neither. Student growth, test scores, and teacher retention were the top three. Mind you that we have one group that's saying student growth should be in the star rating. Another group says it should not be in the star rating, but prominently displayed in the DC school report card. So just something to keep in mind with this. And this is just jumps more into what detracts from educators supporting students and communities. Test scores and attendance were the top two indicators. An overwhelming majority answered between two choices for whether school ratings should be, or I'm sorry, statewide standardized tests should be weighted heavily or not. Most agreed that it should not, that it should not be weighted heavily in the state's accountability system because it depends more on the number of students already at or close to proficiency and less on how effective the school is. I made a note for this on what the state board means by weighted heavily. This might be something to another thing to define when doing a resolution or public engagement pieces. Impacts of the star rating on school actions, behaviors, and policies. Again, we have a mix of different answers, but very few of the teachers, only 14 of the teachers who responded said it had no impact. A lot of them had different quotes and provided different experiences about it impacting the school's actions, behaviors, or policies for positive or negative. Improvements to STAR framework regarding steering resources to schools. Respondents seem to focus a lot on improvements to the STAR framework in general. What I mean by that is few of them use this open-ended question to talk more about steering resources to their schools, and just more about just venting about the STAR rating or just providing more information about their experiences with it. This might be something, again, for a focus group or talking to teachers in your wards and having a discussion so you can have a back and forth with that. But I provide a few quotes on impacts that it makes, steering resources to schools. One thing I wanted to note, the last quote in here, I didn't bold it, but I did want to point it out. One teacher shared, it's unclear how it steers resources in the first place and clearly hasn't addressed education inequities. So why do we even have this? So this might be something to look more into, of teachers not understanding really how accountability systems tie in with support systems. And I know it's been a conversation in the past that accountability systems are not meant or could be thought of as being separate from that. It's just meant to provide us, like, meet an ESSA requirement and provide a ranking. But this is something that might be on the minds of other teachers as well. And then final thoughts, we ask teachers to share just anything else that's on their mind. Again, a mix of different thoughts. And I have a list of quotes here, as well as the, I could share out all of the responses to this in a separate email. And that's about it. This slide also just provides a layout of that. But does anybody have any questions or comments about these?
So before we go jump to that, people got the PDF as well, Darren?
They did not.
Oh, okay, because that then has the broader.
Yes.
So the committee, I don't know how far we want to send that, but committee members should get that. So let's open it up for questions, and we can start with Carlene if she has any. You can say anything, but the two things that are most on my mind are there, in terms of, including this in sort of some report or something that goes out further. Are there any takeaways that are confusing, should be revisited? Are there takeaways that didn't get included? That's one thing. And, things that we want to present. And the other was, whether coming out of this, as well as the principal survey, are there things that start to formulate in our minds about the kinds of recommendations that this lends itself to? Because we're beginning to get data points to start thinking about those recommendations. So with that, I'll sort of throw it out.
Ruth, one more thing that I want to throw out there that I meant to do at the top of this is that public charter schools were severely underreported or underrepresented.
And that was going to be my question. That was going to be my question.
I was reading your mind, Jacques, so I'm kind of cheating.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Darren, because I wanted to know what was the percentage of teachers from the charter sector that had responded to the questionnaire, the survey, so to speak. Because I know a lot of times we give a presentation as if, we are all inclusive, but really we're talking about DCPS more so than we're talking about charter. So what was the actual percentage? As you say, they were underrepresented.
On the screen, I don't know if you can see the screenshot, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of this, but only 26 teachers completed the survey from public charter schools. That's 10% of what I reported on in this presentation.
Okay. Wow.
Grade bands were a bit more representative. Words were a bit representative. And years working as a teacher was okay. I'd say pretty representative, but the school type definitely skewed towards DCPS.
Interesting. Okay. And real quick, I think a lot of that is because I know I tried to reach out and I tried to send out stuff specifically to charter. It's because they see their rating as the PMF. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Jessica, how you would ask, or Arlene, but a lot of them see their ratings. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. At KIPP, they're like, okay, the star is the star, but what matters to us is the PMF, because that's how we get evaluated on accountability, and it affects our charter. There's accountability there in the sense we can get shut down if we don't score well on our PMF.
Yeah, I'll mirror those sentiments. The one principle that I was able to get hold of, but it was outside of the range of when we stopped collecting data. But I was just like, let's just hold this time to, have a conversation because I haven't been able to speak with her, but I just was like, well, you know, we're supposed to talk about STAR anyway, you know, do you have any quick, you know, sentiments? And her thing, she said exactly that, like they feel like the PMF is more reflective of the work that they do. That's also what led me to ask the question I asked for Rashida Young in regards to like what, yesterday when I asked the question about just kind of the components of STAR rating, why might, or not STAR, the PMF, like why might people perceive certain things who, but yeah, from the one principal I talked to, they were just kind of like, they appreciate the PMF more and didn't have a lot to say about STARs.
Right.
I'll just chime in on the demographics. I'm surprised by a couple of things. One was the charter disparity. The other is how heavily they skewed elementary school. There's only 3 tested grades in elementary school, just 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but we had 55% of the respondents are elementary school teachers. So that's interesting to me as well. And then 30% of the people who responded did not remember what their school's STAR rating was. So they talk a lot about the impact it has, but didn't remember what it was, which is interesting to me. The responses don't surprise me. They sound right. I mean, it feels like there's pretty strong support here for a school climate measure, which is something I think we also heard really clearly from our expert witnesses. I also think, to Darren's point, it would be helpful if we are able to define weighted heavily, because I found that to be interesting in our discussion with expert witnesses last night as well, that 40% weight on park growth plus 5 or so % on access growth plus some other growth still felt like an overweighting of proficiency. So I think us getting clear on what we mean by heavily weighted would be really important so that we can have a sort of apples to apples comparison of what we mean when we talk about the weights of metrics. So those are my big takeaways from this.
I'm not gone yet, sorry. I should be gone. But I was typing in the chat and I just stopped. So I'm thinking because, you know, the PMF is being developed and thinking about, you know, there's a lot of call for how to streamline systems in DC as much as possible. Since it seems like the PMF update is further along than we are with the STAR revision, you know, is this an opportunity to streamline any components at all between the two systems so that, I don't know, maybe we get some consistency somehow. That might be a long shot. I don't know, but I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity, since one is about to come online and be revamped, that, you know, is there any way that we can make this system more meaningful to our whole educational system? And I'm getting off for real now. Thanks.
Can I say one thing before you, well, even if you jump up, it's just, I was really taken with the idea that they had looked seriously at the idea of a climate survey. They weren't really clear about, I mean, it sounded to me like there was a lot of interest in it. Obviously, all charters didn't want it, was clear as well, but that they would do it if there was a citywide one. So I thought that was something that maybe we can talk about, recommend. If everybody wants one, we want apples to apples. So, okay.
Oh, that sounds like a good suggestion. Any commonalities? I said that sounds like a good suggestion. Any, as much as we can try to, you know, get some commonalities and, I don't know, try to streamline education in the city. I think that's powerful. All right, I'm jumping off for real. Bye.
Jacques, do you want to, I got a few things you want to get in first?
You can go ahead. Go right ahead.
So I had a couple of questions that I was confused about. So if I'm doing this right, Darren, I think, and I may have a different set of slides on it. No, I guess they're the same. Is slide 6 says that among the indicators that should be prominently displayed in the school report card, but not in the rating, is teacher retention. But then in slide 8, it says respondents indicated that teacher retention, student growth metrics and schools providing a well-rounded education should be in the star rating.
Yeah, I noted that.
Then-
Oh, I'm
What?
sorry. I noted that earlier in the presentation, but you reminded me, another tricky part of this is how do you disaggregate teacher retention? I haven't looked into that, if that's even possible. Maybe it is. I thinking about school climate surveys. There are teacher surveys and maybe, I don't know how they disaggregate it, but it needs to be disaggregated to be counted into an accountability system, but something to keep in mind as well.
So Darren, this is, I want to just come back to this. It would need to be disaggregated if we were using it to fulfill our ESSA compliance requirement.
Yes.
If we want to just include it, it does not have to be disaggregated. So I think
That's
that's
correct.
important, right? So it,
Yes.
we can do, yeah, okay. And I think that for me, it's one reason that over time I have actually become more persuaded that a rating is problematic. Well, it's not directly related, but it's hard to convey these things in a rating in the same way, and you sort of lose the substance of them. Okay,
Wait, Ruth, can I ask
but-
a clarifying question there? Because I think I'm misunderstanding.
okay.
So you're saying that to comply with ESSA, we have to disaggregate by subgroup, but that we could add in other things that we don't disaggregate by subgroup, but still include in a rating.
No, I'm saying that's part of why I've been,
That kind of confused me. So what, say that again?
no, so
So you're saying if we did not create a summative rating, we could include things that go above and beyond our ESSA mandates
correct,
because we would not be calculating a summative score.
correct, exactly.
Okay, those
Okay,
two things
gotcha.
are, those two things are predicated on one another, that we would have to not create a summative score in order to add in things that we do not disaggregate by subgroup.
Well, yes, but let me say it in a slightly, that is true, but here's something else that's true, which we should just be aware of is, I mean, we can just, this one is not what I would be for, but we could, there's a set of things that we have to do for ESSA, and we can still have other things, right? So we could have a rating of other things and still have something like a climate survey that wasn't disaggregated, but it loses its power, I guess is my point, so that you sort of lose the power of it. And over time, that has sort of persuaded me that doing without the rating is better, but okay. So I'm sorry, Darren. So you explained this thing about the 6, 8, and 9 and I missed it.
Yeah, I just noted that both were, like some teachers said it should be just in the star, it should be in the star rating. Others said it shouldn't be in the star rating, but included in the DC school report card. So I just
And then-
noted that it was a theme that came up in both.
I see. And so one other thing, which also relates to the rating, not rating issue, which is sort of rising as sort of a key issue for us, is so teacher retention is an example. So this is a something that a lot of people raise, as this says a lot about the quality of a school. Teachers are saying it, it's in the research. We'll see what comes back from the parents and so on. So to me, it does speak to the quality of a school. It also ends up, because teacher retention is higher in higher at-risk schools, insofar as you put it into a rating, you're going to further skew the rating. Again, it's part of why I came to this thinking of, once I realized it was an available option, that if we can show these things without putting them in the rating, you can show things that otherwise help to skew, would further skew the rating. So, all right, anything else on this?
Could I just say, Ruth, talking to you earlier, about talking with Indiana, and I'm gonna share a report of just my conversation with it. Someone from Indiana, from the state board, the work that they're moving towards, like you said, going above and beyond. So just having something to share out with US Department of Education, ranking schools, but also there's the accountability system, but there's also the process of collecting data and sharing that publicly for helping parents make decisions about schools. And so teacher retention could be something to share out on the report card that would help parents just, if that's important to them, they can look for that. That might be something that could be filtered and help principals improve their schools by using that data.
I also liked that was something Rashida mentioned last night, that the PCSB is thinking about for the new accountability framework, that they'll have 4 tiers or 4 levels rather than the 3 they had previously, but that they are taking a dashboard approach with the display. So they are not losing the rating, but they are making it much more possible for families to compare information that they want to see. I'm mostly focused on that because I thought that was a really intriguing comment by Dr. Simmons last night, that even while he feels conflicted about it, the loss of a rating is something that troubles him a little bit. I noticed that in the YouTube chat for our live stream last night as well, that there was a discussion among a few other folks in there where they were not necessarily comfortable with fully losing the rating, but did want there to be ways to better see information and compare it. I'm sorry, Jacques.
No, I was just going to say, I really appreciated that he brought that from more so from his parent perspective. He was like, look, I'm a father first, and I want to know how my kids are doing. And a rating provides that, so to speak. And I think that's important, that we, as much as some people want to get away with the rating and just want to, do a summative and without some other aspects, I think that's important. And a lot of parents feel that way. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was really interesting too. I think we all thought it was interesting, and it is why, and I now really regret that. I think we may have dropped this from the parent survey when we were cutting it, is that question of how much having the rating, not rating, matters, and how much because see, the other thing that he was saying is, before saying that as a parent, he was kind of interested in it, he was sort of saying, and I certainly think this is absolutely true on the proficiency, the rating isn't telling you truthful information about the effectiveness of the school. I mean, that's my first concern, is that unless you can really pull out all of that proficiency, you're not conveying an accurate impression of the quality of the school. It is really it's an income indicator. So that's my push.
The thing that I believe that in listening to that, and I try to listen very closely, he talked about the balancing of qualitative and quantitative information. I think we do a poor job of bringing in qualitative information. We rely heavily on quantitative data, and that goes into the rating. Now, if we're going to tell the story, I believe you can do so better if you bring in more qualitative information. That could be part of the redesign or something, so to speak. Just saying. So
can I ask one question on that, since we're sort of slowly shifting into what are the kinds of things we might want to say? One way of providing qualitative is hard. Obviously, it's expensive, it's time consuming, et cetera, et cetera. One way that is sort of forming in my mind is that, I mean, one reason we want qualitative is to understand quality at a different level. And one is, I think, to clarify what is the guidance support that a given school needs. And it seems to me that maybe one thing we would say is that part of, if you got a, say, low proficiency scores, or low growth scores, or a low combination of them, something like that, or a low rating, if we had a rating, that you would get an automatic quality school review, so that's part of what would be provided to the school. So the school would get really deep information to know what to do, and the LSAT would, and so on.
I actually love that idea, Ruth, because I think that's one thing that I really value about the way PCSB does their accountability work, that, you know, the tiers were given every year as part of the PMF, but schools also got these quality school reviews that gave really gave deep information. I think that kind of stuff matters a lot for school improvement. I'm not sure it gets at what the other thing I know we all care about, which is getting families enough information that helps them sort of fill in the blanks that might be, you know, in an ideal world, you go see all the schools you're thinking about. But in the real world, families may be relocating or may need to like quickly look at a number of schools. So I wonder if there are pieces of that that could be an opportunity for schools to add qualitative information to the report card in the same way that charters get to add to the PMF, their like school specific, I can't remember what it's called, indicator, Jacques? Is it like a school specific indicator?
Yeah, they're indicators. And I really appreciate that, Jessica, for the simple fact that being a person who works in a school and watches administrators labor over those indicators, so to speak, because we do know what they are, and they do go toward us talking about what is quality and how do you make sure that's part of the framework and stuff like that. That matters a lot to us. When a Susan Scheffler is sitting at her desk with a big whiteboard behind her, looking at all the scores and how to improve, you know, certain things, knowing that, you know, that matters, you know, the quality of the school, some of those indicators, those qualitative things are going to be looked at. That matters to her. And that also gets input into how we run the school and how we run KIPS. We didn't just arbitrarily all of a sudden say we were going to start being no excuses anymore. That came out of a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And we changed how we started doing things in schools.
All right, so we are at 5:15. Let me say this. I encourage people, well, two things. The other question, what is the info that parents really need? That is part of what this Ward 2 group wanted on the little mini survey. It is very much built in a couple of different ways in the parent survey. I hope we get it. But we should also, all of us, be thinking about, you know, what those things should be. And what I would encourage people to do, I will also do it, is to go back through this presentation and sort of note any questions, note the kinds of recommendations that come out of it that we should start thinking about including, and any questions, because I know none of us had really time to look at it and sort of totally make sense of it. So that will be both helpful for Darren as he prepares sort of a final of some sort, and for us as we develop the recommendations. Okay. So the next and the other thing we wanted to talk about was that timeline, and if there's anything on it that should be added, subtracted, changed, questions. And one thing I will say that, you know, I know it has been really a challenge for everybody to, you know, do the kind of engagement that I know we all want to do. I will say that I feel at this point that to a very large extent, you know, people are having their meetings, they're getting out there, and it's, you know, information is coming in. So I certainly, we're not where everybody would love to be, but I know Carlene had talked to me about a plan that, you know, had her doing some stuff around Halloween. Alice, as I mentioned, Zach will be having a meeting in Ward 5. Alistair is doing some work in Ward 2. Jessica just was in Ward 6. So anyway, we're beginning to all get around, and we got this parent survey out there. So
Ruth, can I just ask as a follow-up question from our retreat? Were you able to discuss with Representative Thompson any of the concerns that she raised about engagement? I reached out, and and part of what I was saying is, was there a date that could work? And she appreciated the reach out and has had a very, very busy week, and I don't have anything more to say. But I hope that, you know,
Then if that's the case, and I appreciate that you had the opportunity to talk to Representative Reed. I just want to say,
oh, Jacques, you're completely garbled. I don't know if
now
that's
that
just me
we're
or
kind of
everybody.
but I want to make sure I do this right since we're so recorded. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said, Dr. Reed, from Representative Thompson. I really, for me personally, I did also reach out to Dr. Reed, and I had a conversation with her on the suggestion that you actually gave me after we talked about and spoke with her, just to get some clarification on what you had, the information you had given me, and also have had opportunity to talk to Ms. Thompson. And so I don't know if we're moving toward this area, but if you're saying that we're going to do recommendations in the December
Jacques, we
time,
lost you.
the
We lost you.
emotions that can you hear me again? Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you again.
I said the amount of emotions and passion in which Representative Thompson displayed, I don't think I would hate to go forward, knowing that there could possibly we get to a point where we could have a vote and the votes would not be there, and we'd have to hash that out because we have not at the committee level said that we have giving the representative, after hearing feedback from them, the time to do the type of engagement they want. So if we're looking at December, does that necessarily have to be the time, and what is the big push, especially now that we know that they're not, with the state board giving their presentation, there's not going to be, the rush, so to speak. So just help me out.
Well, I mean, I look forward to hearing too. By the way, we decided at the beginning of this, Jacques, you weren't here, that we're going to call each other by first names.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So that's okay. That's okay. But I want you to know that's why I'm doing it.
Okay.
So I do hope to be in touch with Ebony Rose and sort of talk this through more. Especially when I put together the timeline, the revised timeline, the enhanced timeline that I put out today, I do feel like we're kind of up against the wall. If we want to have a new thing in place, in time, if we want to do it, while this board is still in place. It's sort of like, Jessica rightly wanted to get her social studies standards done before this board is done. I think we're really running into a problem, and there's two issues. I understand. There's the engagement, and the other is we have an obligation to try to do this on a timeline that will allow people to have a new rating by the time we're at and we're running out of time. So that's all I can say right now. It's a fair question, but I think that is what we're up against. So I think that has to be part of it as well. And the other thing I want to say, Jacques, is, part of looking at this enhanced timeline is there is going to be other time for engagement. It's not like, this is the end. This is the beginning. It's to put together a set of recommendations that we all feel pretty comfortable with.
Are we going to do addendums to the recommendations, and then?
No, but it will. But what it will be, I don't know if you saw the enhanced recommendations, because I know you were.
The enhanced timeline.
Yeah, the enhanced timeline is, we're going to make recommendations to OSSI, and then, then OSSI has a lot of technical work to do. OSSI is going to have to try to sort of figure out what this could look like, what some options are. We want to talk to other people in the community to sort of continue gauging support around different parts of it. And then, OSSI will make some recommendations, I hope, in connection with us, in collaboration with us, in tandem with us. And then there would be engagement, in a pretty formal way. That's how we did it last time with our communities. So, and then there'd be, presumably some revisions to that, some discussion about it, and a vote on that. So this is not the end, it's the beginning. Yes.
I just want to ask a couple questions on the timeline that I think echo some of Jacques' concerns, but also are sort of tactical. So you have that November 18th committee meeting would be taking all the feedback to date to discuss proposed resolutions or recommendations. But right now, the three possible dates for board fall engagement at which we would talk about STAR are the 15th or 16th, and then there's one being held on the 4th of December. So one of those engagement sessions at which we would ask people about the STAR would happen after the committee drafted recommendations. Is that accurate?
It is accurate that it would come after an initial set of recommendations, but there would still be plenty of time for amendments.
But we're
And-
drafting a resolution to bring to the working session that happens on December 1st. So it would have to be amendments to the resolution or changes to the resolution that happen between the working session and the meeting on the 15th.
Yes, it would be exactly.
So we wouldn't
which we-
really
which
be
we
able-
always- What?
We wouldn't really be able to take that into consideration then for our recommendations. Like, we as a committee are going to bring forth recommendations to the working session in the form of a draft resolution. So we could amend those, or our colleagues could choose to amend it, but it's not really informing the totality of this first set of recommendations.
Look, I feel like by the time we get to that, we'll have an enormous amount of input. And I think we can draft initial recommendations with the idea that we want to see what happens there as well. And take that into account.
Okay, because so my second question is this, like when we talked at the retreat about the timeline, and we talked about when people had to do their engagements for the fall, we asked them to basically do it by mid-November. What I'm curious about is how will we take all the ward level feedback we're getting, and how does that get processed prior to our November 18th meeting?
I think that goes to the question you put to Darren. I mean, I think people will be one way or another, either people will be sending us information or staff will be collecting information and putting it into memos that would come to us. So we would have that.
So I think we probably have to give people a deadline of at least a few days before November 18th to give Darren and staff enough time to process that, right? So people would need to complete their engagement by some date prior to that for staff to be able to process it into memos.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I
I'm just
would have to
backwards
look at
mapping
the
this.
calendar with that in mind. I guess the committee meeting will be discussing, right? And then we're going to finish it by email. So it seems we'll have as much as we can by the 18th. Yes. And insofar
Right,
as
but
we
I
can.
guess, I'm sorry. I guess what I'm saying though is that whatever we're looking at on the 18th as part of our discussion, we'll
Yes.
need to have it sometime in advance of that, right? We'll need to be able to read it. So right now we have the principal survey data, the teacher survey data that Darren has processed for us in these PowerPoints. We'll have the community survey data by that point, and that's great. We'll have the principal interviews, which Darren also processed for us. So that's great. That's a ton of data. But then we're also asking everybody to do this engagement. By when will you ask those people, myself included, to give that information to Darren so that he can process that to give it back to the committee?
I see what you're saying. Well, we'll come up with a date that works with his timeline for all those people that have done it by then, which will be most people, not everybody, but most people.
Well, but I
Right.
guess that's my point, Ruth, is that if our state board engagements don't even begin until November 15th or 16th.
They do begin. I don't know. I mean, I've had mine.
No, I mean
I
the
think
state board ones, the ones we're doing as a full board,
Oh, I see.
right? Like those will all happen just days before the committee meeting, which doesn't give the staff any time to process that data to share with us. I promise I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm backwards mapping the fact that
I
November
understand.
18th
It's
not possible to discuss all this stuff that's happening in days prior to it.
And I appreciate it because this is my first time going through it. So this is education for me. So thank you.
Look, people can have different views of this. I have given mine. I think we have a lot of data points. I think that, we will have 90% of what we're going to get from a combination of community input and, staff input and expert input by mid-November. I mean, I'm not looking at a calendar to say, and we will have that by our November 18th meeting. If that was the date, let me just say, and I feel like at that point, we can start generating some pretty good recommendations that we will then work on between then and the working meeting. We will talk about at the working meeting, and we will work on, we can continue to amend as we head towards the mid-December meeting. I mean, the alternative is to go to okay.
I just want to, I just want to be real practical. November 18th is a Thursday. The following Thursday is Thanksgiving. So let's say that it is unlikely that there's a lot of work that is going to be able to happen that next week on email or otherwise, because it is Thanksgiving week and people travel to see family. Vaccinations are great. So I think that week it's unlikely to expect a ton of work to be able to get done. The next week is the working session. So we really have to have things done pretty much at our November 18th meeting or on the Monday or Tuesday of the following week for us practically to include it in the working session. My concern is this: if I am a member of the public who is hearing that 90% of what we're using for our recommendations is already done, I'm not sure I'm coming to the November 16th or the December 4th engagement and talking about STAR if I think it's already baked. So is it fair to offer that opportunity to engage if we're just using it to confirm our recommendations or amend it if something alarming comes out, but not to take it into the totality of how we build the recommendations?
I feel fine with it for this reason, which is we're not hearing it to confirm it. It may confirm it and it may not at that point, but it's unlikely to completely upend things. It is very likely to add something, subtract something that we can deal with at that point. I don't think it's likely to upend things after we have as much as we have. And the problem is the alternative is to just continue to push this off, which I think is a problem. As I raised, I just think it puts us in a position of potentially not getting this done. And I think I would feel very bad for the community that has really pushed to have this, get these recommendations in a way that OSSE can deal with them and make something happen. The later we are, the easier it is for OSSE and others to say, well, you didn't give us time. And we're going to have additional time to engage as we go through this. I mean, I'm sure other things will change too, but so that is my view.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question on this because I really think it is a critical question that I have not heard an affirmative response to. When we listen to Rashida Young from PCSB talk about the work they're doing on the accountability framework, she talked at length about how they've been in partnership with OSSE about business rules and how they've had ongoing conversations and they've got agreement from OSSE that they will work together on alignment of business rules. Do we have agreement from OSSE that they will engage on the timeline you have explained in the extended timeline, that between that January and June timeframe, they will engage?
So all I can say about that, Jessica, is I know that, I'm sorry, Jacques, do you want to respond?
I was just saying, I don't think we do. In short, I was just being,
I mean, I
don't think we do.
We've tried, the leadership has raised it, Jacques and I have both raised it. And granted, they have a new acting person and they're not sure what's going to happen with the federal guidelines. We're going to do everything possible to engage with them on that, on exactly that. That's sort of what I wrote into that timeline. That is exactly the kind of thing that we want to engage with them on. But without question, we're trying to drive this, because if we don't, it's clearly not going to happen. And I think that's part tactically, that's where we are, is we need to, if we want this to happen, we have to drive it, and we have to, come up with good recommendations and do, do our best to engage and try to get that kind of engagement and support. And Jacques and I have talked about that, and I think Jacques has some ideas about, how to make that happen. And
But I
Is
do
there
like,
any reason we don't just wait for the federal government to tell us those guidelines? I know they're supposed to do it before the end of the calendar year.
yes, well, yes, because I mean, if you're saying they have committed to putting out new guidelines by the end of the year, that is news to me, I will have to say. We have asked multiple times and been told there was no information. So if you know that, that's a new piece of information.
I shared at the working session that the NASB GAC was told that the department was expected to have conversations with states in late fall of 2021 about accountability for this spring. I don't have any more data than that, but that's what we were
No, but
told
we're not-
in the NASB Government Affairs Committee meeting.
Sorry, we're not talking about this spring. We're talking about how to have something in place so that by the time we hit December 2022, December 2023, there's a different system in place. So this meeting needs to end at 5:30. So I hear that there's still questions about the timeline. So let's talk on email about it. That's all I can say. And as I say, one thing I am eager to do and hope to do soon is talk with Ebony Rose. But so that's all I can say for now, but we can talk further on email.
we'll
All right.
consider this kind of like tabled until we can really talk about it in those emails or however we want to take care of it, because I think it's still an open subject. I will say that I appreciate this education that I've gotten in this last part of the discussion as far as timelines and why the timelines and walking it backwards, and also what was brought up around what they're doing over at the charter side as far as working with OSSE. Now, you're right, Ruth, and I'll be very quick. We do want to have a political strategy and drive this, but at the same time, we do want to make this collaborative so that it is seen as something that is done and they're more open to receiving our recommendation and including them into anything that's done. So I do want to make sure that's part of us as well. If we can do that with the new information that has been said today by Jessica, as far as what comes out of the U.S. Department of Education, I think we should look at that. And I'll leave with that note.
Okay, it doesn't sound like that has to do with the 2023 date, but I agree. So I'll put out an email to people. We can continue the discussion, all right?
Okay.
All right. Goodbye.